Okay, so today I'm going to show you guys how to, if you're going to cut vinyl that is wider or longer than the capacity of your cutting machine, you're going to want to cut your design in multiple pieces of vinyl. So I'm going to show you how to do that today in a way that makes it easy for you to line up that vinyl once you already have it cut. So for the example today, I am making a large sign that has the Pledge of Allegiance on it. As you can see by my ruler up here, it is 30 inches wide by 48 inches tall. So this page setup that I have right here, which you can see over on the side, I have about 30 by 48 because that's the size of my wooden board that I'm going to be putting my vinyl on. Okay, so I have the Cameo 4 Pro, so I have the cutting capacity up to 24 inches wide. So depending on what type of cutting machine you have and what the capacity for the cutting width is, it doesn't matter. You're gonna, change the sizing based off of that. But for me and for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm able to cut up to 24 inches. So that's what I'm going to be breaking my design down into is 24-inch pieces. So I am first going to ungroup my design, and I can do that by holding down Control and hitting G, and that will ungroup everything. Oh, I'm sorry, right click and hit ungroup. When you go to group it, all you have to do is hold Control and hit G, and that will group it back together. So I need to ungroup my design. And because if you take a look right here, this is over 24 inches wide. This piece right here is over 26 inches wide. I cannot just send this through my cutting machine and have it cut in one piece. So I am going to have to, at the max, have either this side or this side be 24 inches wide. Well, obviously this side is not 24 inches long. So I'm gonna have to cut my design in half to where, or in parts to where each piece is no more than 24 inches wide. So if I go through and I select these two, you take a look, it's just under 20 inches wide. So I'm good if I were to cut these two pieces together. And then if I come down here and select this, this is just under 20 inches wide as well. So again, I can cut this one all in one piece. So the problem I have, because I make a lot of oversized signs, is when I go to put this on my board, I'm very particular. I like everything to line up. I like it to be straight. I like the spacing between each piece of vinyl. So between the of America and the and to the Republic, I want that to be spaced correctly. And that's hard to do when you have a huge sign and you're kind of standing over top of it and trying to get everything on there correctly. So a good way to help with that is to draw little markers right here that you can line up to make sure that your stencils are lined up. So the way you do that is, first of all, you're going to come up here. And if you look, actually come over here to your grid. If you click on Show Guides, now as you can see, these little turquoise lines showed up. Typically, these are going to be all the way over here, kind of right where your ruler starts. And then the same thing up here. The reason that they were there is because I've already been playing with the guides today. But, and I can even show you right here. If we're on a brand new page and I come over here and I hit Show Guides, I can come up here and you can just grab a guideline and drag it down. Same thing with over here. Grab a guideline. Oops, I didn't grab it. Why is this so difficult? There we go. Grab a guideline and drag it over. Okay, so that's how it would look when you're on a brand new page. But again, I've already been messing with this design today. So I have several grid lines showing up here. If you take a look, you can see I've pulled a couple of them out. You can also go ahead and you can hide those by unclicking Show Guidelines or Guides, and it goes away. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a guideline and I'm gonna pull it down. And now I'm looking over at my right-hand ruler. And as you can see on the very far right, I have it aligned up with 24 inches. So 24 inches obviously is half between 0 and 48 inches. So I know that this line is going directly across the center of my design. Now, of course, before you do this, you want to make sure that your design that you have made, I'm going to actually group this together really quickly, Control G. You want to make sure that this is perfectly aligned from top to bottom, because you want to make sure that when this grid line is right here, that you're actually in the center of your stencil or of your design. So an easy way to do that is you can use this feature right here, which will center it on the page exactly. It won't do that for mine today because the way I designed it with the text boxes and then grouped it together, that's a little bit more complicated. But if you just, you know, let's say you drew, you know, a big heart and you put some words in the middle of it or whatever, it should work out fine for you. If you group it together and you hit center to page, it should center this on the page. But another way to do it is you can hit show grid and you can come up here. And if you take a look, I've got 3 inches from the top of my board or my template down to the very tip top of my lettering. And if I come down here, I have about 2.5. So it's not perfectly centered. So what I will probably do is just select it and kind of bump it up a bit. So now I'm just shy of 3 inches on the top and just shy of 3 inches at the bottom. That's pretty centered. I wouldn't get too crazy with it, especially when you have a 48-inch tall sign, you know, 1/4 inch isn't gonna make a difference. So now if I just, you know, if I just hit G, I could take my grid lines off. So you can hit G to show your grid lines, or you can hit G to take them off. It's pretty easy. Okay, so now I have my guide. It is centered in the middle of my design for going horizontally. And now to go, oops, this guy on the right tends to be a little bit more difficult to grab sometimes. Now I'm gonna do vertically, and again, I'm gonna come over here. And if you look at the very top, you can see as I move the guideline, it tells me where I'm at inches wise. So I wanna be at 15 inches. So I'm gonna move that over. There we go. Okay, so now I know that this is dead center of my page right here. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to draw an, type an X. And again, you could do that just by hitting T and then clicking anywhere on the screen, and it will put a cursor for you to draw text. And I'm gonna turn this little guy, oops, I'm gonna make him black, okay? And then I can drag him over. You come over here, you click this little button up here, and then you just kind of draw a little square and it will zoom in for you. So I'm going to put, okay, so you see how as I'm moving, it's not really like, it's giving me, it won't let me really just dead center it, right? If you ever had that problem where you're trying to move an object and it's not letting you just move it over a smidge, it's like maybe moving it like 1/4 inch or something, and it gets frustrating for you. If you just hit unclick snap to guides, then that should work for you. You should be able to move it. See how that now I can line it up perfectly dead center. And it's nice because my X is black because I can see my turquoise lines really easily. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to hold down Control, not highlight, sorry, select it. I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to hit the right arrow button, and that will make a duplicate to the right. If I hold Control and hit the left arrow button, it's going to make a duplicate to my left. Although it did that, it just made a duplicate from this guy because that was what was selected. So it went on over here. Let me undo this. Okay, and then there we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna move this one over here, and I'm not gonna go past where my text ends because I don't wanna worry about like if I have to cut right here or whatever. So I'm gonna also like line that up right in the middle. It's still a little bit high. I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing on this end. That way you get a pretty good, you know, straight line for you to line everything up on. So now the other thing you want to make sure is that these X's are not near the bottom or the top of your stencil. So if this was up here, it would get in the way, and that'll make sense in a little while once I finish showing you how to do all this. So you've got your X right there. You know, you could even, I would, because it's so close to the A, I would actually probably make this a little bit smaller. You just don't want to have to mess with this when you actually have the vinyl cut. And everything else looks good. So, okay, so now you've got your X's. So I'm gonna zoom back out. So now you'll be able to, when you go to cut this, you're gonna have the X's with this top piece, and you're also gonna cut the X's with the bottom piece. So then you're literally gonna just lay the X's on top of each other to piece your 2 pieces of vinyl together to go ahead and put on your board or whatever surface. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to, let's choose, let's see, I can do an arrow. Okay, so let's duplicate that. Control, arrow right. Again, if you hold control and you hit the arrow in any direction, whatever direction you choose for the arrow, it's going to make a duplicate of that object and move it right next to the original. So I'm going to object, I'm going to rotate it 180. So it's facing upwards. I'm going to move that guy up there and we'll come back to him. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to zoom in down here. So what we're doing here is now we want to line up this arrow with the center guideline right here. So again, I'm going to put it right here in the center. I paint my signs, so I'm not cutting vinyl to just slap on a board. I'm actually using it as a stencil. So once this is all cut, obviously this is going to be weeded out, and we don't want that. We don't want paint getting on that arrow. I don't want that part of my design. So I'll just put a piece of masking tape or, you know, painter's tape over top of it, or extra vinyl that I weed out of the rest of the design just to cover up that hole so I don't have an arrow in the middle of my design. So that one's done. I'm gonna do the same thing up here. You're gonna wanna make it smaller. Now, again, you know, the lower you go, the less likely you are to, you know, have to worry about whether this, you know, that your cut line comes around right here and you end up cutting this off. So I just try to place it as close as I can to my design without touching my design. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just to make sure that's pretty dead on, as you can see. Okay, so now here we are. Let me zoom back out again. We have our design, we have our arrows. You can go so far as to grabbing another guideline and coming down here and putting it at 12 inches. And then adding an arrow here and an arrow here, and then doing the same thing where you grab another guideline and you come down here and you put it at 36 inches, and then you put an arrow and an arrow. That way you're not just dividing, like this one is dividing up your entire design. If you put a guideline here and a guideline here, now you're actually dividing up each stencil that you're cutting or each piece of vinyl. And that just helps, it makes it a little bit easier for lining up. But what you're going to do is you're going to take a tape measure, you're going to measure across your board or your surface, and you're going to put a little line right there in the middle, and you're just going to make sure that this lines up to the center. Do the same thing on the bottom. And if you do choose to put your arrows on the side right here and then one right here, you would also do on the sides. I don't usually mess with it. It's just more time, and I'm pretty good about, you know, lining it up, so I don't really need that. One thing I definitely can't stress enough is to make sure that the distance from the top of your board to the top of your lettering is the same over here as it is over here. And that way you know that your design is not cattywonk, like this side isn't kicked up lower and this one's not down lower. And then whatever the distance is from the top to here, you're going to want to make sure it's the same thing from here to here and here to here. And that way you know that you're spaced correctly from, you know, the top to the bottom and the left to right. So like I said, you can add those extra arrows if you want. It's just a couple extra steps, but it does make it a little bit easier and foolproof to make sure that your design is perfectly aligned on your board. So once you have that all finished, your arrows set up in your X's, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to take off those guidelines because they just get in the way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my design. I'm going to right click and I'm ungroup it. And then I want to select the top arrow with the top design and the X's, okay? I'm going to hold down Control and hit the left arrow button. That way I can make an exact duplicate over here. And before I click anywhere or do anything, I'm gonna hold Control and hit G to group this together. So now this is one piece to cut. And then I'm gonna come over here and do the same exact thing at the bottom. I'm going to hold Control, left arrow, Control group. I like to use Control G to group because when I try to right click, sometimes it will unselect some of this and then it's a pain in the butt to try and reselect everything perfectly. So just easier to do it that way. All right, so I like to keep this. Let's do this. I'm gonna hit Control, make a copy to the right. And then I'm going to group that one as well. So now I have a copy of this over here. It's all grouped together, but I like to come back and delete all these. I like to have a copy without it, because if I want to maybe one day recut this sign in a smaller size, and I may not need to break up the stencil like I'm having to do now, maybe I'm going to do a 12 by 24 size, whatever it may be. I don't want to have all the arrows and stuff in there, and I want to keep the ratio of the design intact. So now I will control group that, move that guy over here too. So now I have two pieces cut. So I need to come over here, set up my page. Again, like I said earlier, I have a 24-inch with cutting capacity on my Pro. If you only have a 12-inch, then you would definitely adjust this to whatever size your machine has a capacity to cut. So I'm going to select that. It is an object now. So I can go up to object and I can go to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. I'm going to do the same thing with this one right here. Okay, and then now I can put this in here to cut. And you see how my arrow's hanging off a little bit? I'm going to scooch it over just a smidge so I don't have that issue. I'll do the same thing over here. So now I have my two pieces that I can send to my cutter to cut. And then when it's time for you to actually lay the stencils out, you are going to, I will show you this. I'm just using my undo button so I don't have to move everything around. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna line these arrows up just like that. And that's how you know that they're straight. And the way I do that is I will usually peel back the backing to the vinyl on the top piece, and I will cut the backing off straight across. Now make sure you keep the backing on the A. And then you're gonna take this, and now there's no backing on the top X's, and you're gonna lay it on top of the bottom one to make one large stencil. And you just wanna make sure that this A is not on top of the backing for the bottom one. You wanna make sure that the backing for the bottom one, so what I would do is, depending on how much vinyl you got coming off the bottom piece, I would cut like right above these X's. That way your backing doesn't extend past these bottom X's. So then when you go and you put this one on top, you're not gonna have to worry about the backing from the bottom also being underneath the backing for, the bottom part of your top design. That's happened to me before. It's kind of a pain in the butt to fix. So it's definitely fixable, but why have that headache if you can avoid it? So anyway, that's how you'll set it on your board. Now they're stuck together. It's one large stencil. And let me group this together. It's one big stencil. And now you can use your arrows and you can line it up on your board. And like I said, take a tape measure, put a tick mark halfway across. You could even put a tick mark here on the sides if you didn't do the side arrows, and just make sure that the tick mark matches up with the center of your X, and then you'll be able to have your stencil perfectly centered on your board. So if you guys have any other questions, let me know. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks.